Welcome to the Gentleman Project Podcast. I'm Corey Moore.
And I'm Kirk Chugg. We're in the studio today with a guy that I've recently got to know, but you'd think that we'd known each other, I think, for years because Jeff Griffin and I have become fast friends and have gone pretty deep, pretty fast. I really like this guy. He's got a heart of gold and is so well-spoken, has a huge list of things he's accomplished in his life. And I can't wait for you guys to get to know Jeff Griffin today on the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Jeff. We're going to get into your bio just based on our conversation today. So I'm not going to read through a long list of things because I know you're going to let us know what you've done. Jeff and I rode down here today, and we have just amazing conversations every time we're together. Turns out that we're also kind of neighbors.
We are neighbors, just down the street. But thank you too for inviting me here. I like to say that every great man and woman of history is a man of service. And so thank you for this little teeny piece of service that you're given to those who are listening. And I'm honored to be a part of what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So Jeff is a transformational speaker. And I want you to tell the people a little bit about yourself, your story, and what made you who you are and why you do what you do.
Oh, wow. That's like 5 questions.
You know, give us your life story, Jeff. So you were a D1 athlete.
Yes, absolutely. And I got to taste the sweetness of success and got to play 2 downs in college in football. You know, my dream as a little kid, the song that sang to my soul was to play football in college. I'm like, I don't know if you guys, what the song that sings to your soul was or is, but what I've learned is a lot of us have stopped listening to that song. We've stopped listening to that song. We've stopped orchestrating and conducting the song that sings to our soul that needs to be sung for other people to hear. And it's not for everybody. You know, there's, and I get that. It's not for everybody. And I also understand that my song isn't your song, but when's the last time you've listened to that song that sings to your soul? And so for me, it was to play football in college. I carried a football with me everywhere I went. I played it in the springtime. I played it in the summertime. I played it in the wintertime with my moon boots. I know I'm dating myself, but you know, I'd even slow down on purpose to like lay out so I could catch the ball in this big patch of powder. And then I'd come up with a big smile on my face and I'd come back to the huddle and let's run that again.
With yourself.
Right. And then on Sundays when I couldn't play it outside, I'd go downstairs in the basement and play it in my mind. I'd go down and lie on my back and I'd throw the ball as close to the ceiling as I possibly could and get it as close to the ceiling without hitting it, because my mom would always yell at me when I hit the ceiling. And I envisioned making catch after catch from the next All-American quarterback from BYU. I was raised in Cache Valley where they breed them to hate them.
Yep.
But I wanted to go down to BYU and play there. And I was amazed at that experience. You know, ever since I was a little kid, that's what I wanted to do, was play on the big stage, and just the wrestle and the battle that happened inside my mind and outside my mind against the other people as well. I don't know if you ever told somebody your dream before, and you confide in somebody, you're like, hey, listen, this is what I want to do. And they give you every reason why you can't.
Oh, I hate that.
Don't you love that?
That's the worst.
And this word, I can't, it's poisonous, it's debilitating, it's limiting. And as soon as you tell yourself that you can't, your mind
Believes whatever you tell it.
It accepts the answer. And so you're not able to discover and find the solution. And so, you know, fortunately for me, the song was singing so loud that I didn't listen to that. And I learned later on that we as individuals base other people's possibilities on our limitations. Or better said, other people base our possibilities on their limitations. And so they're experts on why we can't do what they believe they can't do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, well, and they kept on giving me all these excuses like, Griff, you can't play football in college. You're too short. You can't play football in college. You're too white. And like, you can't play football in college because you're too slow. And so I'm like, okay, too short, too slow, too white. Somebody told me like everyone at BYU is short, slow, and white, so it doesn't matter.
But you wanted to be like Jerry Rice, right? I'm assuming that he was your guy.
Absolutely, man. I'm telling you, absolutely. Like I had a
Because
poster.
we're like the same age.
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
Joe Montana, Jerry Rice.
I'm like, how did you know that? I'm like,
I can just tell.
Have I shared this secret with somebody before? But yeah, he was my hero. I wanted to be like Jerry Rice. But when I realized that I was not the same color as him, I'm like, okay, maybe Steve Largent.
There you go.
And some people don't know who Steve Largent is. He's an All-American NFLer who probably ran a 4.7 in the 40. But he gave me hope. He gave me hope. I'm like, this guy right here has given me hope. The short, slow white guy. But and so yeah, I'm glad that the song was louder than the voices outside. We reject what we don't understand, and we base our possibilities on what we know. And so there's the struggle. There's the wrestle that each and every one of us has. Because if we want to go somewhere where we've never been before, that's impossible.
You got to do things you've never done.
Right. You've never done anything you've never done before. And so in order to accomplish the impossible, you have to take those steps into the darkness long before you ever see the end. And so I just kept on playing, just kept on, chasing after my dream. And senior year, I came home from practice. My little brother was jumping up and down. He's like, it's here. I'm like, what's here? He's like, it's here. And so I go inside the house, and on the table was an envelope from the school that I wanted to go to, just to make sure I wasn't dreaming, because of all those voices and all those times and all those messages of you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're not all this, you're not this and not that. And so to make sure I wasn't dreaming, I reached down and felt the embossed helmet on the envelope, opened up the envelope, pulled out the letter, and there was a letter addressed to me, the short, slow white guy, from the legendary Hall of Fame coach, Lavelle Edwards. And because I thought he gave these out to everybody, I took it to practice the next day, and I asked my teammates, I'm like, hey, did you guys get one of these? They must be giving these out to everybody. And they wanted to take my head off because they thought I was rubbing it in their faces, because no one else on the team received that letter. And so I had the opportunity to taste the sweetness of success and played 2 downs in college to experience what it might be like to be on the starting team and not just the scrub team. Because that's what I was on. I was on the scrub team, but that's okay, because I loved football and I was able to go against the first team defense, and the scrubs only get in if you're killing somebody or getting killed. And we were undefeated that year, and I was able to get in and taste that sweetness and experience what it would be like to be on the first team. And so as I mentioned before, every great man and woman of history is a man of service, and that's where I learned that was from the captains on that team. Ben Cahoon was one of those captains, and he taught me a lesson of a lifetime. They had done their job. They could have sat down on the sidelines and taken their shoulder pads off and just relaxed, but they wanted to make sure that everybody got into the game. So as successful leaders and leaders of success, which I think are 2 different things, it's our job. It's our job not just to get them to the stadium, but as successful leaders and leaders of success, it's our job to get them out of the stands and onto the sidelines, and not just on the sidelines, but to wear that jersey, and then not just to wear that jersey, but to get out on the field and play the game of life. Because once you start playing life, the floodgates of imagination just open up, and we start to live life in color and HD, and it's, you smell things, you see things, you experience things in such a different way. And I learned that lesson from Ben, where he's going up and down the line, and he's like, hey, do you want to play? Do you want to get in? I'm like, yeah, but coach told me I can't. He's like, who cares? I'll deal with coach. And so I go out there, and there I am. I'm in the huddle. I'm holding hands. I can smell the fresh cut grass, and I'm on the field instead of just on the sidelines. And I got to go out and experience one play. I came out, and my teammates, not my teammates, but my fan club in the stands starts chanting, Rudy, Rudy, Rudy.
Which was our last guest on the podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm like, having my moment. And then I'm on the sideline, and then Ben's like, hey, get back in there again. So I run out there again, and we're on the 6-yard line. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is it. I practiced this play hundreds of times. A 6-yard, hitch. I'm like, this is it. I'm like thinking pass play, pass play, pass play, pass play. The running back comes in, and he calls his own number. I'm like, you dirty dog. And we go out there. The quarterback hikes, the ball, hands off to the running back. He breaks it up the middle, touchdown, game over. Those are my 2 plays. And as I come off the field again, my roommates are chanting, Rudy, Rudy, Rudy. And I'm like, okay, next year, I'm coming back and I'm going to be on the first team. Not just the scrub team, not just on the team, but the first team. I'm going to have some real serious playing time. And then that's when tragedy struck. And I don't know if any of the listeners out there have experienced major setbacks or difficult challenges in their lives, but this one smacked me in the face. This one hit me hard, and you can't see this. And I go around and I speak all over the world, and I come out on stage and address the elephant in the room about how good looking I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hair.
It's the hair, yeah, isn't it?
Yeah,
right.
It's the salt and the pepper.
I know that's not true. And so I can say that. But the elephant is I'm in a wheelchair. I can't hide that. I went from 6'1" to 4'7" overnight, and my identity was taken away from me. My whole identity that I had wrapped my whole life up into was just instantly taken away that summer in between seasons. And I like to go and address the elephant in the room on stage, and that is, I may be physically paralyzed, but I believe most of us, if not all of us, are paralyzed from the demons of doubt, fear, and complacency. And those ones can be hidden. Those ones can be unseen. And how many people are carrying those burdens with them, just trying to get through life? So anyway, tragedy struck in between seasons. I was up 40 feet on some scaffolding. I started my own business as a painter. And I was in Napoleon Dynamite country. I was up 40 feet with a 30-foot ladder, 2 levels of scaffolding. I know.
That's Preston, Idaho, by the way.
It is Preston, Idaho, absolutely. Across the border of Utah. And I cut corners. As I was falling, I learned a lesson of a lifetime, which was, whenever we cut corners, it leads nowhere but down. And so often we're looking for the shortcut, or we're looking for, all these things to help us get there quicker and faster, and sometimes we cut corners, and our foundation isn't solid. My foundation was not solid. Found myself on my back. My back was broken. My dreams of playing football shattered, and so I was lying on my back, fell 40 feet next to an unpainted barn, and the question, I voiced my fear for the first time out loud, and that's what I think I'm paralyzed. And my buddy's like, no, you can't be. I'm like, I think I'm paralyzed. And so made it to the hospital, found out that I was paralyzed. The doctors gave me a life sentence to never walk, never move, never stand again. They gave me a 0% chance of ever doing that. They gave me a 0% chance of having kids. Like, it's the first to go, it's the last to come back. Some of the experts gave me a 0% chance of getting married, not because of my wheelchair, but just because of who I am.
Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Give yourself more credit.
I know. But my wife and I celebrated 25 years last July, and we have 4 beautiful biological kids, and now I can take a few steps forward, and that's my desire and my dream, is to inspire others to believe in themselves through my faith and courage. I want to inspire others to believe in themselves, to take their steps, and to overcome the mental paralysis, the mental doubt, the mental complacency. And if I can, then maybe somebody can think that they can. Yeah, that tragedy turned into a triumph, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you've got to talk to us about what you're able to do now, and take us to that moment when you were like, I'm not going to live the rest of my life in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get out of the wheelchair and prove all these people wrong. People that are listening to the podcast don't know this, but Jeff walks.
Yes.
And when I go to Jeff's house, he opens the door, standing there, walks into his front room, no wheelchair to be seen. When I pick him up in his driveway, he loads his wheelchair in the back of my truck. Pick him up just like a normal guy that can walk just fine like me. Now, when I say normal guy, you are a normal guy. I caught myself there. But like a guy that can ambulate like 2 legs, nothing wrong.
Yeah.
You would think maybe Jeff's got a sprained ankle.
Well, I'm glad you look at it that way. I describe it as walking with swagger.
It is swag. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's walking with swagger, right? I'm like, it is not pretty, but what's interesting is, Kirk and I live right close to each other, and I bought a house at the base of Mount Ben Lomond, and I moved there, and I looked at that peak, and I'm like, I want to climb that. And it's been about 27 years since my accident, and I'm like, I want to climb that. My wife teasing me all the time. She's like, Jeff, you want to climb Mount Everest, but you won't put a cup in the sink.
That's exactly what my wife would say.
And I'm like, listen, putting a cup in the sink is not newsworthy. Even though sometimes as men, we make it newsworthy. Like, dude, hon, I just did the dishes. Let's call the media and let
everybody know.
Let's let everyone know. But I looked at that mountain. I'm like, I want to climb that mountain. And it's 9,711 feet to the top. And I took a group of men with us, ranging from, 3-year-olds to 69, 70-year-olds. And we put together a portable parallel bars. They wrapped around their necks. And so I was in the middle to hold it for balance. And we walked all the way to the top as a team to that mountain.
That's awesome.
It's so cool.
Walked every step to the top with their help and their aid. And, it was a powerful experience for everyone there because it took every single one of us to get to the top. And it just reminded me that team really does mean together everyone achieves more. Yeah. And so I can walk now a little bit. I can walk with swagger. That wasn't always the case. And so, immediately after my accident, I'm like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? What do I want to do? And, people who come up to me like, hey, Griff, listen, if with all this positivity, and all this optimism and all these, nice words, you're going to have mental diabetes.
Too much sugar.
Too much sugar, like too much happiness, too much positivity. And I got thinking about that for a second. I'm like, but I wasn't always this optimistic. I wasn't always this positive. In fact, I entered this sauna of self-pity when I got hurt because my identity was just completely stripped from me. My whole life was getting bigger, faster, stronger. And it was all of my physicality. And instantly, in 1 second, that was taken from me. And so, some of the people who are listening to this, I believe there's been some things in their lives that has just been completely taken away from them. Their relationships with their kids, their relationships with their family, their jobs, their identities, their marriages, whatever it might be. We're all going to experience these difficult challenges and major setbacks. And so the question is how do we approach them? How do we get back up and dream new dreams? And so for me, one of the new dreams was I want to walk again. So I told the doctor my dream. I'm like, Doc, I want to walk again. And he reminded me of the reality. He's like, look down. And I have an incision from my belly button to my back across the side. It was sewn up and stapled shut. And I couldn't even move. I couldn't even get out of bed by myself. It took 2 nurses and myself 30 minutes to get out of bed. He's like, Griff, it's impossible for you to walk again. I remember those words that he used. He's like, it's impossible. And I love the quote from Muhammad Ali, the great world champion. He says, impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it.
Boom. That's awesome.
And so I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's go. So I told the therapist, I'm like, hey, let's walk. I want to walk. She's like, let's go. So she took me down to the parallel bars and she put some Forrest Gump legs on my legs. And when my friends came to the hospital, they teased me like, run, Griffin, run. I'm like, you guys better run. I'm coming after you. But the first time that I stood up, it took me 5 minutes just to get into a standing position with my strength or lack of strength and her strength, and 5 minutes in a standing position. And then there I am. I'm like, okay, success. And I let go and I fell over. And I went from 5 seconds to 10 seconds to 30 seconds without falling over. And I told the doctor the improvement. And the doctor just pointed his finger at my chest. He's like, don't get your hopes up, Griff. You'll never walk. You'll never stand. You'll never move your legs again. So after that moment, they wanted me in the hospital for 3 months. So after that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. If they're going to teach me how to live life from a wheelchair, then I'm out of here. And every day there was a suggestion box at the bottom of the hospital. And so my routine was to go to the bottom of the of the basement and write the same message every day.
What was it?
And the message read, "Let Jeff Griffin go." And it was overflowing by the time I left. I left a month early. My dream was to walk out of that hospital, and I didn't. It took me 15 minutes to get from my chair into the car with the aid of a wooden plank. I felt like I was traversing the Grand Canyon. And so the reason why I share these things with you is because, they say that an overnight success takes 10 years. And we look at people's successes, we look at people's achievements, like, oh my gosh, this just happened yesterday. And we forget all the hard work that's required. We forget what needs to happen along the way. And so there's a lot of hard work that goes into success. And so for me, it's been 27 years since I've been in a wheelchair. And that improvement was microscopic. People are like, well, when was the first time you were able to take a step? I'm like, I don't remember, because it was so slow. That process was so slow. And now, I can get around my house and stagger around and leave my chair in the garage and go places. And so this idea of, our definition of success needs to change, I believe. Because most of us believe that the opposite of success is what? Failure, right? That's what we've been taught. Like, the opposite of success is failure. But I've never met anyone who hasn't failed their way to success.
All right.
And we need to fail in order to learn. It's in the failing that we learn. And it's in the failing that, it's in getting back up that gives us the strength. It's in the challenge that we find the resilience. People are like, dude, how do I get this resilience? How do I move forward? How do I keep dreaming? How do I keep going? I'm like, embrace the challenge, because it's in the challenge that we find that power. And so often we just want to remove these challenges. We want to take away these challenges that we have in our lives. But it's those very things that are giving us the strength to become.
I think, too, in a weird way, isn't that where happiness comes from? Is in the journey, right? Like, people think they're going to succeed at some goal. And that's not that they, if that came easy, there wouldn't be happiness and success, right? It'd just be, oh, now what? But, and by no means do I have any experience related to yours that I could say, oh, I have been through something similar. In fact, I look at myself and say, would I do what Griff did? Could I pull that off? I don't know. I would like to hope. I would like to hope that I could have your mental capacity to say, okay, I'm going to pivot. And I would love to hear more about, like, the mental things that you had to go through to get there. Because, like you said, it may not be exactly what you went through. It could be something else that everyone's going through, right? But the mental capacity, the positive mental attitude that you had, what it sounds like fairly early. I mean, at the hospital, you were like, I'm going to do this, right? Where did that come from? How do people grab that? Like, how do they learn from you on, well, what do I need to do? Like, what are the things I need to do? Because anyone in their life, regardless of what they're going through, needs to tap into what you did in order to achieve. And we haven't even gone over half the achievements that you've had that I've read about that besides being able to walk around your house, which is amazing.
Yeah.
In addition to you've, been in Olympics and you've done amazing things that you'll have to tell the audience about. But I think I would like to go back to how did you get yourself in a place that mentally you succeeded in doing so much with your life?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what was interesting, at one of my speeches, I had a doctor come to me because part of my speech is, at the end, the big reveal. I come roll out in a wheelchair, and the big reveal is, I stand up. And that's all I could do in the beginning, was just stand up. But now I can stand up and then walk across the stage. And then that just blows people's minds. They're like, no way. Like, how do you do this? How did you get, and then that's the question they always ask. How did you do this? And what's interesting is it's a simple step, in my opinion. I call it the daily dime. And here's what I've learned too, though. So many people want the skills and the tools to help them succeed and to go from where they are to where they want to go. But give me the tools, give me the skills. But what's interesting is if you don't change their mindset, they use those skills and tools the same way they used them before. To illustrate, I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Dances with Wolves. Mm-hmm. Kevin Costner, he's bringing out Yellowstone now. But, Dances with Wolves, there's that scene where here he is, Kevin Costner's character is trying to help these Indians who were left over to protect the women. There's a warring tribe that comes, and he's like, I've got a tool that's going to give you an advantage. There's a bunch of rifles that he buried over at the fort. And so he goes and gets the rifles. And the very, very next scene, they have one of the Indians just clubbing another Indian with the butt of the rifle, using it as a tool that they've always used it as. And then the line that he uses is, shoot them. And so are we using the tools the right way? In order to use the tools the right way is we've got to change, we've got to expand our mind in order to expand the tool. And so I call it the daily dime. So you ask, how did you do that? Well, it's the daily dime. It's 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night, and it is where you just, because I really do believe that each and every one of us have the ability to achieve our dreams and desires. We have it inside us already. We always go looking for the answer from someone else. We go looking for the answer from the experts. We go looking for the answers from everyone else, when in reality, we already have those tools and skills inside of us. We have access to that information, those downloads, those divine downloads, as I call them. And the problem is we don't slow down long enough to receive them. We don't trust enough to believe in it. I mentioned that there's 3 Ds that are at the foundation of every problem. And it's desire, dream, do are those 3 Ds. If most people don't know what they want, most people don't know what their dreams are. Most people have no clue where their destination is. And then once they do decide, there's some setbacks and there's some other things that get in their way that causes them to lose track of where they want to go. But the first step is to find out where you want to go, what you want to do, who you want to become. You've got to develop that dream. And so the daily dime is kind of like, the process. It's the steps that you need to do in order to get up out of your chair mentally. And that's what I had to do, was just every day in the morning, remind myself what my dream was. And then every day at night before I went to bed, reiterate what those things are and to listen. It's really not that difficult. It's super simple. It's slowing down enough, meditating, identifying what you want, pleading with your creator. And that's a huge, huge element I believe most of us eliminate as well, or we leave out. And that is bringing in the creator into our lives to create our dreams. We've eliminated we've taken God out of the conversation. And that's been a huge, huge part of this daily dime is bringing that creator back into my creation and co-creating together. I love that. Some people are like, well, how do you do it? It's so simple. And when I went and trained with the Navy SEALs in 2019, they taught me a valuable lesson like, Griff, it's simple to be a Navy SEAL. It's just not easy. And so these steps are super, super simple. It's just not easy. It's implementing. It's doing them consistently and constantly. It's like the compound effect. What would you rather have, $1 million in the bank and you don't get it until the end of the 30 days, or do you want a penny that's going to double every single day and compound? And people don't do the math long enough, but I'd take the penny that doubles and compounds every day instead of the $1 million, because you end up with so much more. And so that's what the daily dime does, is allows you to compound your mental capacity and increase your faith and increase that power that's going to allow you to take those steps into the darkness long before you ever get there. And so that's the step. That's the skill. Believing it and getting there and being consistent with it is another thing as well.
So expound on the daily dime a little bit for us. Are you talking about, so this is kind of crazy that you're talking about this a little bit. So I'm a Christian guy, but I just read over the weekend my first book on Buddhism, just because a friend said, you should read this. It's cool. It's called The Art of Living. And I can't remember the guy's name who wrote it, but he's a monk. And it's, there's a lot in there about meditation, which in my world is close to prayer, right? In my mind, when I meditate, I'm praying. And it's like this two-way conversation. So when you say the daily dime and you say it's simple, and then I have this background of being a Christian, believe in God, believe in prayer, and then I added this idea of meditation that has been, which I think is a cool thing. And that's kind of what you're talking about is, hey, think about what your dreams are and tap into prayer and tap into, I'm hearing meditate, and tap into, really thinking about the how behind how am I going to get there? Right? Is that a part of this daily dime? Is that what you're talking about, or am I missing it?
No, you're going in the right direction. And so the reason why I bring up this idea of dream, you got to know what you want first.
Yeah.
And most people don't know what they want.
Because then you have no direction.
Exactly. And so you're just like, okay, yeah, I can meditate, I can pray, I can be still. But why are you being still? Why are you meditating? What's the purpose behind it? You're just doing it just to do it.
Amen.
And so, okay, I need the destination, I need the dream, I need the direction. And most of us don't know how to do that. Most of us don't know what we want. The majority of us know what we don't want. And to illustrate, I don't know if you've ever been with friends, like, hey, let's go out to dinner. Or let's go out to lunch. What do you want? I don't care. Anything. Let's just, whatever. Let's just have some lunch.
How about Chinese?
How about Chinese? No, I don't want Chinese.
No, I don't want Chinese. How about Mexican?
No, I don't want it. Like, well, wait a minute. I thought you said you didn't care. I don't care. Just not Chinese, just not Mexican, just not Italian. I'm like, okay, well, what do you want? I'm like, I don't care, whatever. And you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
You've got those friends, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. So most of us don't know what we want, but the majority of us know what we don't want. And the problem is where our focus goes, our energy flows. And so we just don't take that time. And all the gurus out there are telling us, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to have your why, you got to have your dream, you got to have your vision, but they never tell you how to do it. And so over these 27, years, after I broke my back, I had to sift through my broken back and my broken dreams and shattered back and discovered some flecks of gold that got me to the Paralympics, that got me up out of this, that helped me exit the sauna of self-pity. And maybe we can address that a little bit later on as well. But I want to just quickly go with the daily dime. So this dream weaving, I call it dream weaving. So the dream weaving is, in 10 minutes, it can happen in 10 minutes, as little as 10 minutes. But if you've never done it before and I'm instructing it, it takes about a good 30 to 45 minutes to go through this dream weaving process. And so what we do here is we take what you don't want, because most of us can come up with all these things that we don't want. I was working with a mother who was like, I don't want to feel like a monster anymore. That's what she didn't want. She's like, I don't want to feel like a monster. And so I'm like, okay. The problem is if you keep on thinking about, I don't want to feel like a monster, you're going to be thinking about the monster. I don't want to be poor. I'm okay. Well, I get that. So, but if you're talking about, I don't want to be poor, you're going to be focusing on being poor. And so with the dream weaving, we go through this process to where we take what they don't want, and then we just unpack that, and then we transfer it over to the things that they do want. And that simple little thing. And then, of course, you got to eliminate it, get rid of it completely. So we tear it up, shred it up, burn it on fire, whatever it is, just get rid of it because you don't want to think about that anymore. When I went to Sweden to speak at the 8th World Congress of Mind Training, I was there with Lars Erik Unnestal, who partnered up with Charles Garfield, who worked with the Apollo Project and coined the phrase peak performance. These two guys are like the pioneers of mind training. And, one of the Formula race car drivers who was presenting there, he's like, I don't look at the wall. I never look at the wall. Because where my eyes go, the car goes. And so you got to be able to come up with where you want, what your dream. I call it your dream, your Everest, your direction, your destination. You got to come up with that first. Because if you don't know where you want to go, if you don't know what you want, then none of this matters. Like your last guest, Rudy, he knew what he wanted. These people, they understand what they want. But these gurus to say, you've got to have a vision, you got to have to do this, but they don't teach you how to do it. And so we've come up with a simple process of coming up with how to find out what you want. What are your dreams? So now that you have your dreams, you're like, okay, now I've got to work on my desires, because have you ever had conflicting desires?
Totally.
You're like, I want to be in the best shape ever.
That's a perfect example.
I also want to go to Jeff's house for some Wagyu hamburgers.
We got to work on that. We got to work on that desire there. I'm like, come on over. We're gonna have some Wagyu burgers here and some salmon and whatnot. But so again, it's like, okay, these desires, do they match up with my dreams? Because most of us don't even have dreams, and so we borrow other people's dreams. We take from other people. And so, but if you put in the work and if you've done the work and you know exactly what you want, you're not going to let anybody get in your way. Haven't you experienced that before? Somebody else comes down and says, "Hey, this is what our objective is this year." Well, that's not mine. And so somehow we've got to help them align their dreams with your objective to where they match up. And so doing a little bit of work is important to really then jump into this daily dime. So now that you know where you want to go, what direction you want to be in, the daily dime is simple. You just wake up in the morning and you remind yourself, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? And for me, it's always just been do more, bigger, faster, stronger. Work harder. Put in more work. And push. And one of the things that I discovered was one of the messages I received from my creator was to give in. And I interpreted that as give up. And I'm like, I don't give up. That's the last thing I do is give up. And it's like, I didn't say give up. I said give in. Well, what does that mean? Give in. And for me, it's just I'm discovering that for me, part of this daily dime is to empty the cup, empty the vessel, empty my ideas and allow his ideas and other ideas to come in and fill it up. And I'm learning that it's so much more productive, so much better. And so for me, praying is getting the message out. Meditating is receiving the message in. And so part of the daily dime is to slow down and do that process to where you're willing to receive that message and then get up and get out and get going and live life to the fullest. You know, I always tell people, I'm like, are you barely breathing and calling it a life? And I'm like, let's change that. Let's flip the switch and let's live life to where we're barely breathing because we can't catch our breath because it's just so fun, so excited. You know, and you're just jumping out of bed instead of being dragged out of bed in the morning because you've got these dreams, you've got these desires, you've got this destination that you want to go to. So you spend a little bit of time in doing that, and now some boom, life just turns on for you, and it just gets exciting. And so that's part of the daily dime, and those are some of the results that come from doing the daily dime.
Now you came in. I'm positive that our listeners are going to want more, and we only have like 10 more minutes. So before I forget, because I'm thirsting for some more, right, of what we're talking about. You brought in a couple of books, and I'm assuming people can find you out there. How do they find you if they want more of what you're teaching? I know that you speak a lot, so I'm assuming that you can be hired to come talk. Like, I'd love for you to come talk to our company, but you've got some books too. How do they find you and the stuff that you have out in the universe?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to my website, griffinmotivation.com.
Okay.
Griffin as in like the mythical beast. Nice. I like to believe that I'm a mythical beast.
You are, Jeff.
And my wife reminds me that I'm neither a beast nor mythical. I love her. She keeps me grounded. But Griffin, Griffin Motivation. And they can go to the shop. They can get the books. They can get the workshops. They can reach out to me contact-wise. And those people who are still with us, hopefully I haven't killed people and they're like, oh man, I'm out.
I'm pretty sure they're on the edge of their seat. Like, tell me more.
People who are still with us, I'm going to give you guys a little love here. If you go to my website and you get a book, I've got two books. One's called I'm Possible, Desire, Dream, Do. It's the story behind how I came up with these 3Ds, and I introduced the 3Ds, and I introduced the possibility principle, which is the footings of the foundation. The 3Ds is the foundation, the P squared mindset. The possibility principle is the footings. And that is huge. And then the Daily Dime comes along. So the Daily Dime is more of the book, Endless Possibilities, deals with the Daily Dime in practice. People are like, how do you put this into practice? And so I put the book, Endless Possibilities, the 90-day recipe for world record results. And so if you go to my website, if you get both books, we'll eliminate the shipping. So buy one, buy both books and we'll eliminate the shipping. However, those people who are listening, if you put in the coupon code LOVE, we'll give those listeners half off.
Nice.
So it's buy one, get one free, no shipping if you get both those books.
Thank
Very
you
cool.
for being a Gentleman Project podcast listener. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Absolutely. So that's where they
Very
can go.
gracious offer. As we, can we do more than 45 minutes today?
We can. I've got like 15 more questions, but it's your turn. I think I've been overextending my voice on the podcast already.
You're getting to know Griff, and Griff and I went to breakfast the other day, and it turned into lunch.
Gotcha. Yeah, I bet it did. It did.
It was like 8:45 to, I think my wife was like, "Are you still at breakfast?" And it was like 12.
We had to pick up our daughters at 1.
12:30. Yeah,
So-
it was. Yeah, we were like, we got to go get our kids from school. I dropped my daughter off at school and then picked up Griff. Went to breakfast, dropped Griff off, and went and picked up my daughter from school.
Nice.
So, Griff and I have had some great conversations, and maybe this is something that we can talk about too. Griff, you have had an enormous impact on youth because you spent years teaching youth about faith and about their creator, about God. And you still are highly involved with that, like just a training this last week for young people. Talk to us about what you see as a challenge that our youth are faced with, and what can we do for like our kids who may be challenged in some of these ways as they're growing up.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Great question. And I love the laws of life. I call them the laws of life. If you can tap into the laws of life, that's all you got to do. You tap in, and you're going to get the results. No matter what your belief system is, no matter whatever it is, it just happens. And I love the law of the harvest. What we reap is what we sow, or what we sow is what we reap.
There you go.
There you go, right? That's why I love it so much. I can't even get it. But the law of the harvest, and what's interesting is fruit is true to its nature. Fruit is true to its nature. And when you apply pressure to fruit, what happens?
It dies.
Well, before it dies,
Well, it shrivels.
but you apply pressure to a fruit, juice is going to come out.
Comes out.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it dies. You got it. You're just going straight to the end. You're just going straight to the end. You're like, it dies. I'm like, yeah, it does die. But juice comes out first. You apply pressure to fruit, juice comes out. You apply pressure to apple juice comes out. You apply pressure to pear juice comes out. But when you apply pressure to humans, what comes out? And don't say human juice, because I've had that all the time, like human juice. But what's interesting is when pressure is applied, when pressure increases, performance decreases typically. And most people think, well, I'll just rise to the occasion. And that's such a fallacy. We revert to what's familiar. That's why defensive coordinators blitz the quarterback to see what kind of preparation they've done. That's why basketball teams apply pressure to see what kind of preparation. When the moment to perform has arrived, the moment for preparation has passed. So we've got to take some time to prepare, and we don't do that very well because we're like, I'll just rise to the occasion. Not true. And so humans are the only creation that I know of that's not true to its nature. We come from greatness. Our DNA is just so amazing. We don't live up to our privileges. And so when pressure is applied to human, what comes out is what we put in. That's what comes out. So if we don't like what's coming out, we've got to change what we put in. And so that's what this program that I've developed and put together helps with, is to help us put in those things that we want to come out. And the question you asked was, what can the youth do to improve their lives? And what's interesting here is, in order to help the youth, we've got to help ourselves. We've got to change ourselves. And the reason why I bring that up there is because the fruit does not fall far from the tree. We always want to help the youth. We always want to we want to educate the rising generation, when in reality, we need to start by changing us. We need to start by focusing on us and making sure that we are doing the things that we want them to do. And so, we always talk about these youth programs and whatnot. And in reality, I want to go there and just have an adult session. Like, listen, we need to do our part. We need to step up. We need to be those examples that they can look to and turn to. And that's why it's so important. One of these steps is who hangs on your hall of heroes? Who do you turn to find inspiration when times are tough? And you would want your kids to turn to you. Because on my hall of heroes hangs my father and my son. My son is 21 years old, but he is a man's man. He is a high-level game player. And my dad is the same thing. And so I have those two people on my wall that hang up there that I turn to find inspiration. And so, what do we need to do for these youth? Well, we need to start with us. And so we can preach what we practice.
Yeah. I like that too, because what we would all say for our children that we want them to be purposeful in choosing the way that they want their life to turn out. And when they see us being the same way, that we are taking action to be purposeful in the way we want our lives to turn out, there's no better way to encourage that in them in their life than to just show them. There are some challenges, though, that youth today deal with, and their parents can be resources for them. What do you see has been really helpful as youth have come to you? I know my kids are in a seminary program like you taught in for years, and they really respect and admire that teacher in their life. And so I'm sure you've had some good conversations with kids about things that they're dealing with. What have you seen that's helpful as far as parental involvement and how we can help our kids overcome some of the things that they might be dealing with, aside from just doing the work on ourselves as well?
Oh, absolutely. It's getting involved. I say play. Put yourself in situations where the environment does the teaching, so you don't have to do the teaching. Does that make sense? Instead of standing back and just, pointing your finger and preaching and telling them what to do and what to change, put yourselves in an environment where you let Mother Nature do the teaching. And then you get to have experiences, and then you get to be able to have conversations, and then you're able to relate. And so get out and get doing things, and put yourself into situations to where, just the natural surroundings does the teachings, but be prepared to have those conversations. Just sitting around a campfire is huge. There's something mesmerizing about those flames and those embers. It's just like, oh my gosh. And then you start saying things that you typically wouldn't say and whatnot. And so then you're able to make that connection and whatnot. And so that's just one simple little example of just getting out there and doing things together. Go out there and shoot guns together. I took my daughters shooting. They were so afraid of those guns, and they were so afraid of the experience. But then we went out there and we were able to pull the trigger, feel the percussion, hear it, smell it, and then have a discussion afterwards. And we still talk about that moment. And so get out there and just live life together and do those things together, because so often we think that we have to have these rigid, things in place in order for principles to be learned. And so I like to say, just play. I worked with a plumbing company. I'm like, just get out and play plumbing. Parents, just get out and play parenting. Just get out and play life. And so those type of things, and give yourself experiences to where, you're having those experiences together. And so for me, it is getting into the trenches. If kids and youth are struggling, get in there with them. Get in there with them. And again, going back to what I really do believe, you mentioned that I taught for 17 years, and I used to say that I worked with some of the harshest critics called teenagers. And that's true. But I've discovered that human beings, like adults, are just teenagers who haven't figured it out. And if we'll admit that, if we'll be humble enough to admit that, we're trying to figure these things out. But because we've grown physically, we've arrived physically, that we think that we've arrived mentally and socially, and intellectually and whatnot. But if you're not growing, you're dying. And so, I always say that one of the biggest things, though, is coming back to, as a Christian man, bring Christ into your life. As a believer, I believe that we have taken out the solution, and we've given these equations, and we leave out the solution, which is including our Creator. I believe we've been created to create, and we need to invite our Creator back into this process so we can co-create. It's like parenting. It's parenting. Allow that Creator back into our life so that we can create together. And you're asking, what can we do with these kids? Well, let's get into their lives so that we can co-create. My son and I, we want to create what's called high-level gameplay. Just create a group of high-level gameplay. And what does high-level gameplay look like? How does high-level gameplay look like to a teenager? How does high-level gameplay look like to a young adult? How does a high-level gameplay look like to a parent? And throughout that process and whatnot. And my son is teaching me. He's 21, turning 22, and he's teaching me how to be a high-level game player. And it's just been so fun. I'm like, hey, let's go create. Let's go play. Let's go play.
Cool. That's cool.
Love it. Well, we're now out of time.
We are.
But we do ask one question at the end of every podcast.
Yes.
And that's, what does it mean to you to be a gentleman? So will you answer that for us? What does it mean to you to be a gentleman?
That's a great question. And I know I joked earlier that I thought that, I keep telling people, I'm like, I have the privilege to go talk at the Gentleman's Club. I'm like, the Gentleman's Club? I'm like, no, that's not right. It's not the Gentleman's Club.
We're trying to reclaim the meaning of that word.
Yes,
Griff.
please, because that has been taken over. It's the Gentleman's Project. It's the Gentleman's Project, and I think that's so beautiful, because what does it mean to be a gentleman? And I kind of relate that to, what does it mean to be a man? And there are certain roles that we must take on, and all I have to do is just look to my dad to know what that looks like. If I ever write a biography book, it's going to be my mother's son. My mother taught me so many things, and I am so much like my mother, because my dad was out working and doing things. And but I'm so much like my dad. And I've just sat back and watched and observed and see him function and see him work. And so to illustrate that is, after I took on, once I started painting, going back to the painting, I went into Bennett's up in Logan to ask them if I could get the painter's discount, my father's discount. My dad's been coming to you guys for 20 years. I'm like, I'm starting my own business. Can I get my dad's discount? And he looked at me and he's like, as long as you pay on time and you pay your bills. And to try to, show confidence, I'm like, oh, I'll pay better than him. And the guy pointed his finger at me. He's like, there's nobody better than your dad. And so to me, a gentleman is my father, who puts God first, and puts his family next, and then he puts others. I talked about the greatest men and women of history are men of service. My father falls into that description.
Nice. Jeff, good definition. Thank you, my friend. You are a gem. I'm glad you're in my life. Can't get rid of me now.
I love it. We're going to be friends forever. and I'm like, listen, man, we can have a part 2, part 3, or we can just say we can go off into the distance. But this has, honestly, you guys, thank you so much for what you're doing. This message needs to get out, and we do need to reclaim what a man is. We do need to reclaim what a gentleman is. And it absolutely starts with us. And I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. I always say that it's easy to look good sitting on the shoulders of giants, and I'm sitting across the table from 2 giants. Thank you for letting me be a part of this.
You're very kind.
Well, I don't know about that, but you have now twice told us thank you. So thank you in reciprocal, taking an hour plus out of your day. I know you're busy and have a lot of people probably asking you for your time. So from us to you, thank you. Thanks for your insight. Thanks for your time. We really, really appreciate you being on.
Absolutely. Anytime. You guys are amazing. I'm telling you.
I think Jeff could be a guest co-host easy.
Oh yeah.
If we ever can't fulfill an obligation to be there when a guest is there, you may hear again from Jeff Griffin, everybody.
Awesome.
So, thank you for joining us on the podcast. Thanks for spending the time that you have with us. Hopefully you've received value today as you've listened to Jeff Griffin. Go to griffinmotivation.com if you want to know more about Jeff. Order his books. Coupon code LOVE. Buy one, get one free, no shipping.
Absolutely.
For Gentleman Project podcast listeners. Thanks very much for your support on the podcast. We are coming up on a huge milestone for downloads, and it wouldn't be possible without you guys. We looked the other day, and the Gentleman Project podcast ranks in the top 2.5% of all podcasts worldwide, and that is only because of you and sharing the project with those that you love. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kirk Chug.
And I'm Corey Moore. Have a great day.